Hi, greetings everyone. It is very good to see your faces, to see familiar faces, and to be in your company today. So, I am Natalie Bennett, the fourth director of UIC's Women's Leadership and Resource Center and the Campus Advocacy Network in the center's 30th year of existence and what is its third or fourth location in the past 10 years. Um, and of course, I have some folks who have been around much longer than I am, so you definitely need to correct my historical details. But there are many ways to tell the story of the Women's Leadership and Resource Center and the Campus Advocacy Network. Today's panel on centering students in the center's history of care, community, and resistance comes out of the initiative of undergraduate students and alumna Imuna McClurkin and Juliana Wilson, who some of you have already met and talked with. This conversation today is just one node in the ways that students have been central to the existence of this center and of many centers, but this one in particular, as well as its future. And so I just want to kind of flag that for all of us as we're kind of in this moment. So the official story of the center is that it emerged from student activism in the fall of 1990, when a multiracial coalition led by Black students demanded an institutional response from the chancellor to the racist harassment of Black students, including racialized sexual assaults of Black women in campus housing. The response to create this center, as well as the African American Cultural Center, that sought to address issues related to climate, to create a space for both agitation, education, as well as respite from a campus that was less than welcoming to students of color and especially to women of color. This is largely what many women's and gender equity centers do on campuses, right? So these centers can be many things for the graduate and undergraduate students who come into contact with them. And I'm sure some of our panelists will speak to those various ways. The centers can be a political home. They can be a space to nurture resistance and connection to a broader feminist and social justice community. They can be a place to build research skills, communication skills, mobilization skills. They can be a place to put one's skills to work. Equally important, of course, is how the centers can be spaces where students learn about what it means to do feminist work in an academic context, what it means to participate in that work during the time that they're a student when they're still learning, but also a way to imagine how they might themselves shape the space of higher education that they enter as educators, and as administrators, as postgraduate students, et cetera. So I'm very much looking forward to this conversation, to hear the ways that we might build on what exists, to create more opportunities for students to learn, to thrive, to agitate, and to contribute to a lively and a bold 30 years to come, but also a way to connect students to movements wherever they may find themselves. So on that note, I will introduce Meghna Bhatt, who is one of UIC's, I think, one of my favorite alum. Of course, I'm going to say I have favorites. Everybody's a favorite. But Dr. Bhatt, or Meghna, is a proud first-generation Desi immigrant, survivor, scholar, immersive storyteller, and outspoken gender and social justice advocate, with 17 years of work experience in diverse settings. Meghna earned her PhD in criminology, law, and justice here at UIC with a specialization in gender and women's studies. Dr. Bhatt is currently a project manager at Valorous, where she currently oversees statewide anti-sexual violence advocacy and prevention projects. She's committed to using her lived experiences, research skills, storytelling, and film to create accessible, trauma-informed, equitable, and long-term social change. Dr. Bhatt is also an alumni of the NAASA Women of Color Leadership Project cohort and is currently a board member for the National Girls and Women of Color Council, Incorporated. So on that note, over to you, Meghna.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bennett, Natalie, Ramona, and Kelly for this opportunity and such a warm welcome. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning to anyone who may be joining from the West Coast, or maybe it's just me. I am Dr. Meghna, but my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm honestly like thrilled and humbled to have this wonderful opportunity to be moderating today's panel, Centering Student in Women's Leadership and Resource Centers, History of Care, Community, and Resistance. I always tell my chosen UIC and Chicago family that you don't have to ask me twice when there is an opportunity to reconnect with our Chicago community. I also would like to acknowledge that I live in Sacramento, California, and this area was and still is the tribal land of the Nisenan people. I acknowledge that I'm standing on the tribal lands of Sacramento's indigenous people and thank the Sacramento Native American Health Center for sharing this knowledge. Today, we have a panel of fierce and fabulous colleagues joining me today. They are former and current students, as Natalie mentioned, who have worked at the center. So you'll be hearing from our experiences, kind of getting nostalgic a little bit there, you know, with our volunteering experiences, and mainly like about building this community at UIC, right? We all have this common goal or vision that was so truly aligned with that of the center. And it's to advocate for gender equity and social justice at UIC and beyond. So I do want to be mindful of the time, but I definitely wanted to mention that I'm humbled to be in this virtual space with the beautiful company of my colleagues to celebrate and commemorate 30 years of the Women's Leadership and Resource Center at UIC. So heartiest congratulations on that. Our panelists are Juliana Bernier Carrasquillo, hopefully I got that right again, okay. Megan Daniel, Dr. Keisha Farmer-Smith, and Dr. Stephanie Hicks. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. As you know, Natalie mentioned I'm a storyteller and we all love hearing stories, right? So first of all, we would like to know about your story. So could you and we'll start with maybe Juliana, Megan, Keisha, and Stephanie, if that's okay with y'all, could you briefly tell us about your history with the Women's Leadership and Resource Center? Like how and when did you get first involved? Juliana, would you like to start?
Yeah. So just to repeat your questions, how we first got involved with the Women's Center, right? Okay. So it's kind of a little bit of a funny story. I have a probably different entrance. Well, maybe, I guess we'll see. But how I found out about the Women's Center, I was in the writing center at UIC. I just got to campus. I just got to Chicago. And I found out how much tuition was. I'm not a person that, I guess I didn't really do my research too well before I got to the campus. And I was like, oh, wow, this is pretty expensive. You know, so I was at this writing center trying to figure out how to write APA style. And I was talking with another student. And I was like, man, this is expensive. I don't, you know, all this stuff. And she's like, well, you know, a position just opened up at the WLRC. A graduate student was working there and they had just left. And, you know, and it's a way that it will pay your tuition and you will get paid to do there and you get to kind of do some internship work there. So I was like, oh, forget APA, like, let's go there, you know, like, let's do that. So I started looking online how to apply and all these different things. And then I was like, you know what, I'm just going to show up in person. And so within 30 minutes, I went to the WLRC and Dr. Bennett was there and another staff that was working there previously was there. And I was like, hi, I'm here to apply for the graduate assistantship that I have heard about. And we kind of like did an interview right on spot and we just started talking, we connected right away. And that's kind of how I first got involved with the WLRC and learned about what was more to come.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always interesting, right, when you look back at it. Thank you for sharing. Megan, would you like to share your story?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Megan. My pronouns are she, her. I'm still a graduate student at UIC, and I'm joining from Chicago. I first heard about WLRC and CAN through programming. And sort of similar to Juliana, I would just show up. And so that's how I got on the mailing list, because there's the clipboards at every single event sort of religiously on the tables when you walk in. And I probably put my email address on everyone every time, because it's just sort of this habit, this ritual that you have when you go, you're like, okay, I walk in and I'm going to put my email address on. So I've been attending programming since I started school at UIC in 2014, I want to say. And that came in the form of art exhibits and teach-ins and facilitations. And I went both as an attendee and then as a teacher or a graduate student instructor. I'd bring my classes to the center for teach-ins. And then when it came to getting involved as an intern or an employee as a graduate student, in this past summer during the pandemic, UIC created these positions for graduate students who needed funding, and sort of reached out to centers and departments on campus who had work that needed to be done, and were like, what skills do the graduate students have, and what work do the centers and departments need done? And I saw that WLRC was on the list, and I reached out to Dr. Bennett, and with a similar sort of swiftness, did the interview the very next day. So that's how I got involved in a sort of more formal capacity.
Thank you, Megan, for sharing that. I think I'm echoing, and all the experiences are bringing those wonderful memories back. Keisha, would you like to share your story?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Keisha. I use she, her, or they pronouns, whatever is shared with love. And I'm excited to be here today. I first came to the then called Office of Women's Affairs right after having a baby, a little one who is now 18 and preparing to attend UIC next year. And I came to them because I was in trouble. I needed support. And someone told me about a program called Campus Advocacy Network. And I kind of tearfully showed up at University Hall one day, and Heather took the time. Heather was the director at the time. She took the time to talk with me and explain the services of Campus Advocacy Network. And within a week, I had a scheduled appointment and was given free to me counseling services. I had 10 sessions and then a referral for more counseling. And that support helped me navigate through my doctoral program. It helped me stay enrolled in school because I was thinking about leaving. I had this new little baby who was born 7 weeks premature, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. And the Campus Advocacy Network, and then later, the Office of Women's Affairs really gave me the strength to pull within myself and to lean on other women and to build community on the campus. And that strategy worked for me. And I will always be grateful to the Women's Leadership and Resource Center because of that.
Thank you, Keisha, for sharing that story. Yeah, it's always good to have that community, like support you go through such difficult times. So I appreciate you sharing that in this space. Stephanie, I'm interested to know your story, even though we've known each other for a while.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. It's so great to be here and see familiar faces again. It's really just a good day when I can do things like this. My name is Stephanie Hicks, and my pronouns are she and hers. And I will say I am zooming in from the University of Michigan, which is located in Ann Arbor. And University of Michigan comes out of a land grant from the Anishinaabe and the Odawa and the Ojibwe and the Potawatomi people. And though the promises of that treaty are woefully unfulfilled, I just thought it was important to name that, as others have. But I came to WLRC CAN. I was a graduate student in the School of, in the College of Education at UIC, and I was there for a longer time. But when I came to WLRC, I was already working in the Office of Diversity as a graduate assistant and working on starting up intergroup dialogue programs. And one of my favorite people in the world, who's also a fellow graduate student, and at that time worked at WLRC CAN, Dan Cairo, worked with me on intergroup dialogue projects and was running Peers to Allies, which is a program that is a part of WLRC CAN, and asked if we could, start to brainstorm maybe how dialogue could be brought into peers. So it was a sort of a project or a connection that grew out of friendship and our relationship in graduate school. But I have to say, hearing everyone else's stories of how they were so supported by WLRC CAN and so welcomed in is great to hear. And it felt similar. I got to be with the program through a couple moves myself. I started in University Hall in the administration building, and then moved with the group over to the building that was across the street from the forum, and then to the location on Taylor Street. So I had a pretty good long run, but I worked on peers and then started to do some orientation stuff over the summer with Rachel Kydor, and got to work with Kisa Reynolds and some other fantastic folks. So a few different projects, but my start of it was working on peers. So that's how I got started.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, I think all of y'all highlighted some of the important points, right? Like what drew you in, or how your participation evolved over time. I mean, it's like, for me, it was, I heard about Women's Leadership Center through Campus Advocacy Network, and I actually got a chance to do my amateur acting debut in a freshman orientation video that addressed different examples of gender violence. But that's when I learned about Women's Leadership and Resource Center, and found every possible opportunity to immerse myself in, the spaces, the learning experiences. So yeah, if you see me nodding, it means I'm like echoing everything each one of you have shared. So thank you. That kind of brings us to the next question, right? Like, how did your relationship with the center influence the way you approached your academic work, or any other, related work that you're doing right now? So Juliana, would you like to start sharing?
Yeah. The WLRC influenced me in many ways. Again, I think the way I came into the center, I remember kind of like calling my mom afterwards, and I was like, yeah, Mom, like I just got this internship, this assistantship, and like my tuition's gonna be paid, and we're crying together. And I was like, but I don't know any of these things. I don't know any of these terms. Like I don't even know what all these different kinds of ways that people are advocating. I'm not, familiar with these things. Like, I don't know how this educational process works. And I remember going, talking to my mom, like, I don't know how I'm going to fit in there. And so it's interesting though, because I remember kind of saying that in the beginning, and just little by little being in this very, that small but community-centered space where folks weren't judging, they weren't, oh, you don't know any of this stuff. I mean, they were willing to teach and willing to hear where I came from and hear what my experiences were, and able to help me shape them into a more educational way, and say, well, these are actually how those things showed up in your life, and just without the labels. And it's like, oh, okay, so I finally learning the labels to it kind of helped shape where I was going. I did do my master's in social work at UIC. So just having these classes that were so heavy, also having this space that was an internship that was also heavy, but it was a place where I could process it all. And so I think that's kind of how it shaped the classroom for me and how it shaped my learning experience. And just another big piece of it too was just the staff there, Dr. Bennett. Dr. Bennett alone, and all the other staff there was so we're so great. We're such a great in people to observe, even if they weren't directly teaching you, just observing their passion, observing how they moved in the space, observing how they advocated for others. Those things was like, wow, this is a really great space to be a part of. This is a really great, I love how they approach this. I love the words that they used. And I think that's kind of also how it shaped my academic world and also just my individual world.
Thank you so much, Juliana. Yeah, I find that, I found the center space to be really affirming and validating in many, many levels. So Megan, could you explain or could you describe how your, the relationship with the center influenced the way you approach your research work?
Sure, but I also, Keisha, were you unmuted? Were you raising your hand?
I did raise my hand because
Sorry about that. I didn't see that.
No worries. No worries. I was just really feeling when Juliana, when she shared just the power of learning in a safe and brave way from the actual staff at the center. I don't think that can be underscored. So my director was Dr. Rebecca Gordon, and she did very similar things, just a lot of mentoring and a lot of teaching through example and teaching through inclusion. And when I was nervous, because at the time I was, in my doctoral program and trying to figure out what my topic would be, and literally my topic, exploring youth development through the standpoint of young women, it came through my work at Office of Women's Affairs. So I just kind of was waving my hand in amen when you were sharing that. So yes.
Thank you, Keisha.
And since I'm talking, I'll just share my response to the question. One of the things that built and cultivated my relationship with Office of Women's Affairs, very similarly to Juliana, is the way that you can both learn from the space, but also be very safe and be very comforted in the space. So oftentimes, I found myself in the Office of Women's Affairs space, even though at the time it was teeny tiny, you all, teeny tiny. That couch back of Dr. Natalie, it took the entire wall of the main space. It was so small. And I found myself going there not only to learn, but to feel safe, because sometimes some spaces in my college weren't so friendly and weren't so comfortable. And so I really will always appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Keisha. Yes to everything right now. Appreciate you sharing those insights. Megan, would you like to go next? I'll make sure.
Sure. I think, what comes to mind for me is super similar to what folks have said so far in terms of the sort of moments or events that stick out most to me. I learned a lot about facilitation and teaching and just meeting people where they are. That seemed to be what everybody did really well. So I took my students to an art exhibit that was at the Montgomery Ward Gallery. It's called Blood at the Root. And I saw it in an email, the ones I had signed up for. And I reached out to Rachel Kydor, who I think was an assistant director of CAN at the time. And she said, sure, bring your classes. And I said, there's going to be 3 of them and it's on a Friday. Are you sure? And she said, yes. And the art exhibit was unearthing stories of state violence against Black women. And the class that I was teaching was an introduction to sociology class. And the way that Rachel held that space for my students and met them at the very different levels of engagement that they had had with that material before was so beautiful. And I learned so much, you know, in that short day about holding sort of different emotions and different levels of comfort with the same thing for different people. And I think that that's really shaped who I am, both as a teacher and, you know, as a scholar or researcher and academic more broadly. And it also really got me thinking really critically about artwork. And that's, you know, it's a part of my research now as I look into social movements that focus on reproductive justice and state violence. Artwork is a really critical piece of what we think of as social movement organizing. And so it was super formative for me. And I think too, going to a teach-in that Kisa Reynolds facilitated, again, different levels of engagement with the history of incarceration, but being able to really masterfully facilitate discussion with students and community members who had had really different life experiences is something that has stuck with me for a really, really long time.
Thank you, Megan. When you were sharing, I was thinking, I also actually shadowed Rachel Kaitor when she was doing prevention workshops for the sorority and fraternity groups at UIC. And I was like, oh my God, like, I feel like this is my calling in many levels. So yeah, I had, a shout out to Rachel Kaitor right now. And then I also worked with Dan as well. But I feel like there's so many of these spaces, and that learning experience is constantly, it's a very, it's like holding on to your authenticity, but also evolving and holding ourselves accountable to learn, right? Like, how do you tailor these educational programs in different spaces and different communities? So thank you for sharing that. Stephanie, I'm interested to know about how that shaped, how the center shaped your work.
Yeah. So, I echo so much of what people are saying. I think learning by watching and learning by shadowing was so important for me. I remember, so much of what I remember about working at the center was doing several different things in a day, right? So I would be there while folks were coming in and out for advocacy appointments. And so, making sure people felt seen and heard and supported in the space on sort of an individual level. But then running across campus in the summertime to do the large orientation sessions, which you starred in through video, which are, I had that similar feeling of watching Rachel and Dan do it and thinking, this is how it's done. And also remembering just how challenging that is, right? Just remembering that the work is so many different things at so many different times, right? It is a very, for me, it was a very different experience to have those really awesome small programs with folks like Kisa and folks like Dan and folks like Rachel that really helped me think about abolition, feminism, and really sharpen my lens around that. And that was so different from going into a room with 200 about to be first year students and talking to them about what sexual assault was, and then talking to their parents about things that could occur on campus. And all of those things are important, and then they require very different skills, right? Meeting people where they are. And so I think that shaped me as a facilitator. I think I also did some sessions with some of the sports teams, which is also a different set of situation, right? When folks are coming to the Center for Programming, or folks from the center would do programming for folks who got in trouble or something, required that, somebody needed to go out and do sessions with them. So it was a range of different things, and they all required sort of meeting people in different stages of their development, and myself being in different stages of development. So I think it really informed how I teach and how I facilitate. And I remember specifically, I was talking to Amuna to get ready for this, and we were talking about this same thing. And I told her that, I felt like I didn't come into WLRC Can with a real sharp lens on abolition feminism. I thought of myself as a feminist, and I think I thought of myself as a Black feminist, and I learned so much more about state violence and about violence against women and how that connected to movements around abolition. And I was telling that to Amuna, and she's like, you know, that's a flex. Like, that's a cool thing that you got to sort of bypass some traditional ways of thinking about feminism and going straight for that. And I was like, oh, I didn't think of it as a flex, but I think that is a flex that, you know, I got to work with these great folks that helped me sort of have a sort of straight shot into some of those ideas. And I got to learn with them and learn from them. So I think it informs, you know, how I meet folks where they are, and try to understand that, you know, we're always in development, we're always in process. And on any given day, we are in a bunch of different places around these issues. And it's great to have supportive folks around that are doing that work. And so I think because I teach in a social justice education program, I think it helps me really think about what the work is for, like what skills I'm trying to equip people with. So when they go out into the world, they can understand how to think about different movements they want to be a part of. And so I hope that all made sense. That's what I learned.
Absolutely makes sense. Yeah, because I think some of the interviews Emona did with like current and farm, especially the farmer students, I think that's one of the themes that have come up, right? Like about learning and the different definitions of feminism and how it shows up, and like learning about especially like about Black feminism. For me, as a first generation immigrant from South Asia with privileges, I had a lot of unlearning and learning to do. And this was one of the spaces that I felt safe and comfortable, whether it's through the teach-ins or seminars or just stopping by to say hi to the staff, right? I just felt like it was a part of that learning curve for me. I got to learn a lot, much more about the nuances and complexities and the layers of what feminism looks like and shows up, right? Like that kind of thing. So yeah, I echo with what you're sharing. And I think, I think that brings us to like the next question. It's a great segue about how have you brought the center with you into your current work, right? We talked about research and, our like interdisciplinary areas of research and work, but how does it, how have you brought it with you into your current work? And I would actually like to start that with Stephanie, if you don't mind, because I know you're on a time list too, so I want to be respectful and mindful of that.
Well, thank you. So I and thank you all for sending out the questions earlier. It was nice to be able to think about some of this stuff, coming into it. So I was looking at my notes, and one of the most recent ways I think is that I just got finished working on an anti-racism plan for the college that I'm a part of here at the University of Michigan. And I have, so many different competing feelings about how those things shake out in a university space. But I was able to work on, one of the sections that I was able to work on was around carceral policies. And I don't think that I would have had the knowledge or even had an interest in being a part of that project if I, hadn't been a part of WLRC CAN. And during my graduate school years, I think I was able to come to Michigan with sort of a frame that I didn't know would be as useful as it was when I got here. So that's a really specific way. But I think having been in the center and just learning by watching and by doing my advocacy training there, I did my 40 hours there. I had some sense of, what campuses might want to think about and what they should be thinking about, and then being able to bring that to a very different university. The University of Michigan has a different student population, is a different kind of place, but that's actually an asset, being able to bring that here and then think about some of those things in this context is really useful. And so being able to say that, yeah, if we're thinking about carceral policy, that means that we're thinking about race and gender and sexuality and other things at the same time. Like there's not sort of a one group or sort of one identity approach to this. And I think WLRC gave me that. And yeah, and so I guess there's one more sort of thing that I'll say, because I don't know if I'll be around for other questions where this might come up, but one other concrete thing that I think has carried throughout is that when I was still a graduate student at UIC, I started Yoga for Black Lives, which was a series of donation-based yoga classes, and all the money that was raised, we gave to different grassroots organizations in Chicago that were resisting state violence. And I was able to bring that with me to Michigan. And I think, and one of the first few classes I ever had, I had at WLRC. And so like just literally space was made for me to do that there. And so when I think about things that I've carried with me and I've been able to keep doing, and ways that I've been able to make some small, contribution to movement work at, WLRC, and what I learned there as part of that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I was going to just ask you, I was going to anyways ask you a prompt, like, what about Yoga for Black Lives? Like, if you're not covered it, I would have probably requested you to share that, because I know I've been following your work, and it's been incredible to see like how much, the impact and the purpose, right? Like the vision behind it, it kind of aligns again back to what we have learned in the center. So, Keisha, would you like to go next?
Sure. So it's kind of difficult for me to answer this question, because I feel that the wonderful, supportive environment that I received at the Office of Women's Affairs, I feel like it's always followed me. I feel like the folks that were there, like Athanasia and Heather and Rebecca, all of these phenomenal human beings and others are still a part of my life. And whenever I do work that I'm committed to, they are often standing there cheering me on, just as I am cheering them on as they do their work and as we all move forward. So one of the things that I absolutely was thrilled to do postdoctoral with the Women's Leadership and Resource Center was the Free Black Women's Library. It was a wonderful event. We haven't had one in a while because of COVID, but I look forward to being able to figure that out again. And we had several cycles of it, a space where human beings, any person could come and get books for and written by mostly Black and brown women. And I, at the time, I got the opportunity to support a children's corner when we had it at the now beautifully renovated South Shore Bank, and was able to share about 200 of my mom's books. She had passed away, and we shared all kinds of early childhood materials and all the way up to young adults. And so that's something that I absolutely loved. Another thing that I really was honored to be able to learn was my skill set as an intersectional evaluator. My evaluation opportunities before working with OWA were really minimal, kind of focused on strategic plans or focused on municipal proceedings and policy that those of us in urban planning get excited about. But those things were often predicated on something that we called the rational model. And that rational model really did not pay attention to all kinds of issues that I was facing myself as a mama, as a woman, as a homeowner, as a student, as a human, right? And so I was talking about these challenges with the then director, and she pointed me out to who at the time was rather new on the scene and very brash and bold, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, and the concept of intersectionality and the reality that every single human being has both privileges and also challenges based on their identified experience. And not only then did the office expose me to that, but they gave me the opportunity to actually do research. And we got to do a safety study looking at how human beings on campus, primarily women, but also all human beings on the University of Illinois campuses experience safety and how they navigate the campus. And we did a series of town halls, and I talked to women on the different in the different areas, professors and staff members and students, about how safe do they feel on campus and where are some areas of concern and what can we do to make change. So those are just two of the many, many, many experiences. I've had experiences as a professor, forwarding and recommending and sometimes walking students in that could use the resources. And I always lead with myself as an example. I think that's important to be able to share with students and kind of share that reality that I was a student like you too, and you can do this. And this was one resource I used to help me. I went to Campus Advocacy Network, and this is a great resource for you too. And I think that, I could go on and on, so I won't, but I just think one of the powerful things about the way WLRC works is that you not only get fed, you not only receive, but you can share out. You can give out. And for every one of the projects that I've worked on, I've actually received far more than I've given out. And there are very few spaces like that, in my opinion, not only on our campus, but in the city of Chicago, where you can be safe, but you can also assist with transformative work. And for me, WLRC is one of those spaces.
Thank you, Keisha. It was interesting when the question came up. I was like, I actually wrote there like intersectionality in my notes too. So when you said that, I was just like, oh my God, like for me, it was about learning that intersectionality is not just a buzzword, right? Like it's much more deeper than that. And how do you incorporate that into our spaces and our work? I will speak a little bit about myself later if you have time, but I do want to elevate and uplift the space for Megan, if you would like to share your experience.
Sure, yeah. I think for me, since I'm still writing my dissertation, that's what I'm in right now, so I'll focus on something else. Now I brought WLRC's sort of experiences and skills to that. And Stephanie, I like how you use the word sharpen, because I think that the center as a space has really also sharpened my sort of like analysis around abolition and feminism and state violence. And I think I wouldn't have so readily identified as an abolitionist or as someone who really got it before spending so much time in WLRC's programming, and certainly not before living in Chicago in 2014. I think certainly a lot of the education I got about feminism when I was a young person was really steeped in white feminism, and definitely didn't make any connections with state violence. And I think one of the things that the center has been really unapologetic about, at least in the time that I've been introduced to it, is making those connections. I don't see any sort of compromises in those regards whatsoever. And I take that with me everywhere I go. In my current work, outside of academia, I am a part of a really beautiful and robust team of helpline supporters at the Chicago Abortion Fund. And so we provide financial, logistical, and emotional support for people seeking abortions, both in Illinois and people traveling to Illinois, people traveling from Illinois all over the country. And what I've taken from WLRC and what I've been able to sharpen because of WLRC's programming around state violence and abolition and policing has helped immensely in the work that I do and being able to meet people where they are, because policing and criminalization is a huge part of people facing barriers to abortion access. And it also deeply matters for people's lived experiences as whole people outside of just trying to access healthcare. And so, to be a person on the other end of the phone who is meant to say hello, how can I help you? Like, we're here to support you. Like, we got you. What can we do for you? We love you. And to really mean those things, you sort of have to get it, and you have to sharpen that analysis a bit. And it can't just be hollow words. And so I think that if not for the programming and really the unapologetic nature of being like, we're going to make these connections and not have a myopic or, single issue focus about anything, the work that WLRC does has helped immensely in shaping that movement work, I think.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah, I would like to actually open the space to Juliana, and then I'm happy to share my reflections as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's also a bit interesting, when I think about going into social work school, and I knew I love to help people. I have a big heart, and I have my own lived experiences, and that was kind of the mindset I was going into social work school with. And then being at the WLRC, being in these classes again, learning these greater issues instead of them just being rocks in one's path, and it being, oh no, these are actually like legit things. They're not just like rocks in one's path. They're actually like legit things that people are working on, right? And being in a space where I could see like, oh, they're working on it here, right? And it not just be like much further. And then even further, having the ability to take piece of that work was something that was such a great opportunity for me to expand my mindset that I had at that time of like being a social worker with like, oh, I'm coming with my experiences. And that was like, not to be like, okay, here's some like extra educational background to what's going on, to what's been going on in your life and to the lives around you that, I had really just put blinders on because I was like, I have to finish, I have to graduate, I need to get through this. So it's just like everything else going on, I'm just, rocks in the path. And I was able to figure out a way to remove them on an individual basis. But being in that space, again, gave me that backbone, which is now the backbone that I use as a social worker here. I'm, in New York again. And I think something that actually just happened the other day in my workplace, through the WLRC, I had the opportunity to receive services and to be referred for services, and to be my first own client. Like I learned that I had to be my own client. And so that's something I learned there. And the other day when, I was in a session and I had a client with very parallel experiences to me. And I was like, at the end of the session, I was able to like, I'm so glad I did my work first. Because how would I have had space for that client's story, for that client's experience, if I hadn't did this work first, if I hadn't been introduced and be able to give that client actual educational information instead of just saying, these are just rocks in the path we face as women, we face as people, like, it's just things we have to overcome, and able to say like, hey, no, like this is the work that's being done. This is like the things that we need to label them, and we need to really see them as bigger than just rocks, but it gave me that space to take that deep breath. And I was so grateful that I had that experience at the WLRC with the advocate services, get that referral out, and to be my own client before I go out into this world and be, counseling others. And one last thing too, I wanted to say, there was an interesting time during my work at the WLRC where it was just me and Dr. Bennett for a bit. I don't even know how long it was, but it felt like a long time because it was just me and her. And it was like, wow, this is really stressful. Like how are we going to get all this stuff done? And I think it was the summertime, we were preparing for the semester to start or something like that. And I think one really powerful thing I learned during that time was this ability to see that like breakdown and like having limited, I don't even know what I want to say, but I guess the breakdown of things doesn't mean like that's the end of all things, but it means like there's a chance to build new, there's this chance to grow, and there's this chance to like reshape. And I got to again observe Dr. Bennett do that because it was just me and her, and I got to see how like we had all these new staff coming in and all these new types of things, and it was such a powerful way that now I can see when I'm out here in this real world too, to see, oh, don't be fearful of these breakdowns or fearful when these things happen at your job, like when it looks like all things are breaking down, but here's a chance where now you can make new and where you can grow and where you can make things better. So I think those are how I bring into my current work.
Wow, that's a lot of powerful information. And I'm like, I mean, powerful stories and insights, right? I feel, yeah, and Juliana, I think I was able to relate to that because I am in the anti-sexual violence movement or the anti-gender violence movement. So I've not only learned to use like my experiences or how it's shaped me from, being involved with the center and campus advocacy is not just about talking about how, whether it's feminist movement or intersectionality, but it's also about like bringing the feminist critique lens to my dissertation research, which was a really transformative experience for me because I had a lot of learning to do as I said, for someone who did not grow up in this country, right? I currently work at Valor or Valor US. It's a national organization. It was formerly known as CALCASA. So we do the same thing. We advance equity, we end sexual violence. And there's a reason why I'm in this moment, in this role, is because of the, as you said, like all the tools, but it's also like the knowledge, the wisdom that I was able to carry with me while whether as a preventionist or as an advocate, when we are providing training assistance to our rape crisis centers, right? Whether it's on gender and social justice. So I'm very grateful again, like each one of you, to that, the wonderful learning spaces that was created by the center, right? To the experiences that shaped who I am right now and what I wanted to do with my degree as well. So thank you all for, providing those detailed insights about your experience. And I think one of the things that I do want to elevate is this is, since this is the 30th anniversary, right? The 30th anniversary theme is centering care and community, 30 years of resistance. So when we reflect on that theme, if you could summarize or highlight what was the center, what has the center meant for you as a student at UIC? So if you're keeping in mind, the theme, as I mentioned, what has the center meant for you as a student at UIC? And I would like to again invite Stephanie, if that's okay with you, just, okay, share, thank you.
Just trying to unmute, my screen floated around for a second. So, the center has meant a lot of things. But I mentioned this before when I was talking about Yoga for Black Lives, but I think what it's meant to me is being a place to develop and to try things out. I think what resonates, and I think a lot of people share this, was that it was a place where folks could be brave and not be afraid to learn in front of each other, to learn in public, right? It wasn't having a lot of space to grow and having a lot of things to learn wasn't seen necessarily as a negative. It was seen as an opportunity. And I also specifically remember it as a space of healing. I remember vividly the day after the 2016 election, quite literally, we turned the center into a healing space that day because I remember that I woke up the day after the election and I came to campus, not knowing what it was going to be like. And I sort of walked into the office and I think Kisa was there and Ileana was there, and we just sort of looked at each other and we're like, so what is this, so what are we gonna do? And we, I think as everybody came in, we just realized like, today is not going to be a day like others. I mean, some things will happen that have happened in all the other days before at WLRC, but today is a particular day. And so we're just going to make it what people need it to be. And so, you know, it was just sort of open door. People came in and colored together. People came in and just processed what they were thinking about, what they were feeling. It was a lot of drop-ins, you know, a lot of people just had their office doors open. I remember people were just working in the center of the office, just sort of being there for folks. I remember professors calling the center because they were concerned about their students and didn't know other places to call. And I remember there was one particular incident. I remember it was the end of that day, I think, and I was getting ready to leave, and a professor called WLRC, and I happened to pick up the phone, and they were saying, you know, I haven't heard from my student in a while. The election, you know, just happened, and I'm wondering if I should call the police to go check on them. And I was like, no, actually, here's some things. Like I'm actually glad that I caught you on the phone. Like, let's talk through maybe what you want to do. It sounds like you really care about your student and you want to make sure they're okay. Let's talk through what some other things might need to do so that you can, you know, figure out what. And I just remember being really nervous, but also thinking like, oh, that's trying to put the work in perspective. And thank goodness maybe that I answered the phone. You know, if nobody had, I don't know what would have happened with that professor. But I remember it being a space like that, right? A space where in ways large and small, people could be supported and held and also find some space of healing. And I have to sign off. So thank you all so much for having me. It was truly an honor to share the space with all of you. Thanks to everyone I can't see, but I know you're there. Thank you, and take care and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's so good to see you.
Okay.
Yeah. I know Stephanie mentioning, and I was like, thank you, Stephanie, for sharing your experience, but she kind of got that message. But Keisha, would you like to build on what Stephanie shared and, you know, based on your own experience?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I feel like I just went to an inspirational service. I mean, everything that was shared, I was resonating with, and it's so awesome to have the opportunity to reflect on all that WLRC has meant for me. I'm going to be honest, I don't think I would have a doctorate. I don't think I would have been able to create community in the way that the Office of Women's Affairs helped me to create community in my own college. About 2-3 months after being in the safe and affirming and supportive and calm Office of Women's Affairs, as tiny as it was, I bravely went back to urban planning with lots of lavender and sage. And we formed a group of women who were all trying to finish their degrees. And we would use OWA space. Sometimes staff like Heather or Athanasia would reserve space for us in University Hall. And we formed our own little community, our own sub Women's Resource Center. And out of the 7 of us, 6 all finished their PhDs. And that was because I had been reminded. See, I've always, even as a younger youth, I've always sought out communities of women to build and learn and grow in. But sometimes when the stress of the world presses you down so much, sometimes when you're juggling children and work and life and being an older student, being an older Black woman trying to get my doctorate, sometimes you forget about the power of community, and you see OWA woke that up for me. So when I say I do not believe that I would have finished, I mean that. And when I defended, I was so anxious. I have a reading difference, a cognitive difference that I have successfully been able to navigate. But all of those old insecurities came up as I got ready to defend. And my OWA sisters were right there. Right at from the day I walked into that office with a newborn and leaky boobs to the day I defended and successfully discussed the role of feminist standpoint theory in designing youth programs. They were right there. Heather was at my defense. And so when I literally say, I don't think I would have finished, I mean that. And the powerful thing is, OWA just didn't affect my student life. I feel like it affected who I am as a human being. Whenever I need to build alliances, I am honored to be a founding member of the Chicago Freedom School here in the city. And whenever we need resources or support, I know exactly where to go and who to go to, right? Whenever I need to hone my own understanding of intersectional learning and applying it to community development principles, I know where to go to. Whenever now as I've gotten older, I'm proud to say I'm 48 years young. And as I have wanted to continue my own learning post dissertation, it's Women's Leadership Resource Center folks who I can sharpen my understanding against, right? So I know I'm talking for a long time, but I feel like I really owe the center so much, and I can only hope that I continue to exemplify the values that I learned while I was there. And then the last thing I want to share is I believe very strongly that UIC would not be the campus that it is without the center at all, because Dr. Natalie and other directors do so much unseen work. They don't just create a safe and a brave space for us as students, but they are the reminder to all of those institutional decision makers that intersectionality matters, that women of all types, whether you're a born woman, whether you have a uterus or not, all women matter. And I really do not believe our campus will be the campus it is without the center. So thank you for letting me respond. I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
No, you, of course. No, you're, wow, that was beautiful. Thank you. And yeah, I echo everything, like, you know, each of you have been sharing so far, right? Just about bringing those values that we learned and how that shaped our work right now, right? And whether you're part of the movement or I feel like in the bigger picture, we are all part of that movement, right? For gender equity and social justice, whether we're doing research or any other work like community work. With that being said, I would like to invite Megan, if you'd like to share your experience.
It's just such a hard thing to follow, everything that she said. I mean, what else is there left to say, you know? When I first saw this question, and like Stephanie said, I'm so appreciative, Kelly, that you sent them out ahead of time, because I really like being able to reflect on, you know, all the years I've been able to interact with WLRC. When asked about sort of the care and community I've been sort of blessed with, I guess, over the years, a couple of things came to mind. One is that I always look to WLRC as a guiding light in terms of the messages that we get from the center. And I'm not a person who looks forward to receiving emails. When I have a lot of emails, I'm like, I don't want to be perceived. I don't want to be found. That's enough. But the emails that Dr. Bennett and other leaders have sent, and, you know, the staff who work tirelessly to sort of curate these resources for students and faculty and staff, it's really healing for me to read those words when everything that's going on around us can be really destructive. And you know, the words that I'm reading aren't it's not just trying to placate us and tell us that everything is going to be okay. I think that the messages that we have always gotten from WLRC remind us of a couple things. They sort of ground us in history and, remind us that we have been here before. There's sort of nothing new in the world in terms of feminist struggle. And so if we're feeling a little lost or disoriented, that, just take a breath and ground ourselves and just look to history for a sec. And, we don't have to look too far because Dr. Bennett includes the links for us. We always are reminded that we're not alone. There are other people, if you want to tap into something or you want to look to people who are working to change or heal something that needs healing, there are people doing that work if you want to join or if you just want to watch it happen for your heart, right? And there will be lists of those things. There will be examples of that work. And that work is featured in WLRC's programming, and UIC needs that. And the students need that. And students are often the ones who are involved in the work and driving the work anyways. And departments at UIC are uneven in their commitment to political practice in that way. Some are great, some are not. And so depending on what you go to school for, you might not get that. And so I think that is why centers like this are so critical. And then in terms of just sort of practical everyday things, I wrote a chunk of my dissertation proposal at WLRC, surrounded by people I knew really well and people who were perfect strangers to me, but we were all sitting there in community doing the same thing. And we were fed, and there was good lighting, and it was quiet. And International Women's Working Day, I think it was 2017, we all decided to withdraw our labor from scholarly pursuits, and we were walking around campus and decided to go to WLRC. And Dr. Bennett provided us food and craft supplies, and we made adorable signs and crafted our labor statement that we sent to our professors in our department that said, why we were withdrawing our labor and what it meant to us. And so it's just always been a space, both physically and metaphorically, I guess, for people to gather and do whatever work needs to be done, whether it's our writing or, political work, big and small. And that it's not, I don't find that space in a lot of places at UIC, and that's why the center is so invaluable to me.
Thank you so much, Megan. When you were talking about emails, I graduated in 2017 from the Criminology Law and Justice PhD program, but there's not a single time that I don't check the Women's Leadership and Resource Center emails from UIC. Like literally, I go through every event and everything. And I wish I could be joining, most of these spaces and the events, but they are really good. Yeah, exactly. But it also, as you said, it creates that space where, you feel connected. There's a certain sense of nostalgia, but in a very empowering way, very liberating way. So I could relate to what you had shared just now. Juliana?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, but I think as a graduate student, it served a lot of different purposes for me again, and it kind of sounds repeating, but that non-judgmental space, that space where you could come in and you could learn. It was very much like a continued classroom for me. It was a place where the things I was learning in class, I was able to take it and bring it there. It was what I was learning in the center, I was able to take it and bring it back into classroom, right? It was a place where I could apply something. And actually, me and a few other interns were actually able to create a program that we facilitated together from it called You, Your God, and Feminist Ideology, where we talked about the intersections of Christianity and feminist ideology in regards to reproductive justice, sexuality, and sexual orientation. So it was really this place where you could just take everything you're learning from all different places and really do something with it. Again, it was a supportive place as far as, as a person who's kind of comes from the you know, the ideology of us Spanish people, that we have this ideology like, what's dirty, you clean in the house, you know? And so coming to a place and seeing all these brave people come forward about their experiences and saying like, oh, like we can speak about these things. And like, you know, and when it had hit me that I did need to be my own first client, like that, there was that space already provided there. And it was accessible, and it was, you know, something, it was supportive. And I think another piece too is just that me coming from New York, going to Chicago and going into these grad classes with, you know, you get into this comparison thing and being in a place where like, who am I? You know, and I remember having these conversations that are like, I'm not like any of these people. I don't talk like them. I don't write like them. I don't know these words they're saying. And I feel so out of place, and being able to come back to the center and see all these women of color, all these people of color just have these powerful positions where, you know, they would come back from their meetings and tell you, and they would like let you know like what's happening in this world, and seeing how they use their power in those spaces. And it just gave you that ability to say like, oh, look at how they're doing it, you know, like you do belong here. And you can visually observe these people and how they're taking their power in these spaces, even when they don't feel that they belong. And so I think Dr. Ben always told me something of, you know, in relation, I belong, I make myself belong, you know, like, and, you know, she takes that power, and that was visual for me. And then I got to just hear it and talk in the conversations at the center with Kisa, and we had a lot of, it was a good supportive place.
Thank you so much, Juliana. Yeah, when you were sharing that, I felt like I am seeing this common theme is about the sense of belonging in a community, right? It's not just about learning and unlearning. It's about bringing, as I said, like those experiences with us where we go along and helping us navigate those difficult times or situations or dilemmas. For me, as again, as I said, as an international graduate student who, you know, I felt it was a very safe, inclusive, supportive, and affirming space. I could just drop by and, you know, meet people, because I used to feel so homesick sometimes. And as much as you know, I would drop at like our department, but also I would drop at like, you know, the Women's Leadership and Resource Center. And I still like, I'm so glad I was still able to like connect and drop by last time when I visited Chicago and met Ramona and Kelly, I think, and Kisa. So I mean, I feel like that sense of belonging makes me feel much more connected to who I am and how, you know, how I want to contribute or be a part of this moment, right? So thank you for sharing again about that. We do have one last very brief question, but before that, I do want to pause for audience questions, as I posted to everyone by mistake. But I just want to make sure we have like, maybe give a couple of minutes to see if anybody had any questions for our panel, for our panelists. Feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourselves. This discussion can go all day, right? Okay. I wanted to, you know, give some silence and pause to people in case they're thinking of a question, but I will pose the next question and we'll see the chat in case anybody else has, you know, thought of a question suddenly for us. So this is going to be a more challenging question. It's going to be fun. So if you had to choose one word to describe the Women's Leadership and Resource Center, what would it be? I said it was going to be a challenge. So just one word to describe the center. And anybody can go if you have thought of it.
I'm gonna go just because I don't want my word to get taken. It's community. Comunidad. Community. That's my word. Thank you.
Juliana or Megan?
Can I say my one word and then just give a little more?
Sure.
So my one word is space. And and I say space because it's a space to learn, it's a space to grow, it's a space to open your mind, space to find intentional communities, space to be away from campus, space to relax and have some healthy snacks, as long as I didn't do the order. Dr. Bennett did the order, then we had some healthy snacks. Space to not be judged, space to fight back, space to be supported, and to support others, and space to be us, and space to heal.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Megan?
Mine would be connection, I think. Space to draw connections in your mind and make connections with other people and with community. And
I would say it's 2 words, but it's 1 word. I would say like it's my chosen family. I mean, that's what I see as an international student far away from home, and being here for 17 years, and I still get nostalgic, and in a very, again, as I said, in a very positive way. So yeah, that's the word for me. But I feel like there's one question that we have from Dr. Mark Martel. I'm so happy that you're here, Mark. So one of the the question that he has is, from what you know of the center today, what would you like to see for the center in the future? So if you're able to like briefly, like maybe say a sentence or 2.
I think that's such a lovely question. I love that. I hope to see the Women's Leadership Resource Center continue to grow and thrive. As I shared earlier, when I was a graduate student, it was this tiny little, but super, super, super powerful, important space on the campus. And I was so excited to see the WLRC get more space in the last few years, because I feel like it's so needed and it's so well deserved. And I would like to see continuing support so that every single academic department that truly needs to tap into the resources can do so. And in order to do that, we would need to see the Leadership Center just continue to grow and thrive. One thing that I have really loved to see Dr. Natalie do, and I feel that she does exceptionally well, is representing the WLRC in the larger Chicago and regional community. So continuing to do that outreach work, working with groups of women doing activist work in their own neighborhoods, or trying to build resources in their own communities. Dr. Natalie already does that, and I'm really hoping that the university just understands how important that is. It's one of the few centers doing land grant work for an institution that is supposed to be a land grant institution. And I think that that she just epitomizes and represents this idea of inclusivity and a hand-in-hand partnership with the outer parts of our Chicagoland community, not just on campus. So, and I hope to be a part of that. If I could do anything to help in any way, I hope to be a part of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Keisha, for answering that question. Juliana, Megan, anything to add? You good? Okay. Thank you, Keisha. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's about continuing and building that work. I know that sense of belonging, I feel like, from surviving to thriving. And I think the center helps the community to do that, from surviving to thriving. And I know we threw out a lot of names of people who we have worked with. I know you mentioned Heather and Keisha and Athanasia, Rachel, Dan, Dr. Bennett, Ramona, Kelly, Ada, and many other students who have been working with them. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to appreciate everyone, and I would like to thank you all so much for your time and sharing your stories and experiences. As you know, as I mentioned, like we can talk forever about how much the WLRC space and UIC meant for each of us. And it is too phenomenal a role and impact it had on our lives to be just, sharing in this 1.5 hours, right? But I wish you all the best for each of your work. Megan, good luck with your dissertation. I feel like we've heard of each other, but I've never got a chance to meet you. And I also appreciate all our audience to be here and providing us this space as well. I wanted to give it back to, is it Dr. Bennett or Ramona?
Yes, I have is it me or you, Ramona? No, maybe I should look at that.
It's you. Go for it.
So, I don't like this role of closing a program like this, but let me say that I feel like we have been given a charge through this conversation about how the kinds of intentions we need to set for the future for the center, how we need to learn and grow and reflect on many of the things that you said here today. And I promised that I wouldn't cry, so I'm gonna see if I can keep it up for another 2 minutes. But I think what I have learned from you more and far beyond anything that I might have done or brought to the center is the kind of critical role that these spaces play for our survival, for the futures that we create for ourselves and our families, and for the communities that we work with, advocate for. And I think it's very hard for many people to see that, but they can certainly hear it through the stories that you tell. And so I also want to charge you with telling this story, telling it in as many ways as you can, in as many directions as you can, because we can start to take spaces like this for granted. The institution never does. It is always watchful. It is always paying attention. And so the feminist work, the change-making work that we do outside of the institution is always necessary and critical inside of it, even as we try to make it a better place for all of us. And so I want to thank all of you for remaining present, for remaining connected, for feeding me your energies in all kinds of ways. And I hope to see you again sooner than later, if this pandemic would just end. And looking forward to building a community with you in the months and years to come. So thank you.